This is no longer a rumor. It's an official directive, urgent and unprecedented. Iran has just ordered all Israelis to evacuate immediately, declaring that the country is no longer livable. This statement is more than a warning. It signals a potential turning point in Middle Eastern history. What has triggered this drastic message? What does it mean for Israel, for Iran, and for the world? The implications are far-reaching and possibly irreversible. For decades, Iran and Israel have stood on opposite ends of a deepening geopolitical fault line. Their hostility is not a recent phenomenon. It is rooted in ideology, national security, and regional dominance. Since the 1979 Islamic Revolution, Iran's leaders have openly denounced the state of Israel, refusing to recognize its legitimacy and calling for its elimination. In turn, Israel has consistently viewed Iran as its most dangerous existential threat. One of the core elements fueling this tension is Iran's support for armed proxy groups that oppose Israel. These include Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas, and Islamic Jihad in Gaza, and various Shiite militias operating in Syria and Iraq. Through these networks, Iran has established a presence along Israel's borders, increasing both the physical and psychological pressure on Israeli society. Israel has responded with frequent airstrikes in Syria and covert operations targeting Iranian weapons shipments and commanders, many of which Tehran blames for escalating the conflict. The most volatile factor, however, is Iran's nuclear program. While Iran insists its nuclear ambitions are peaceful, aimed at energy development and scientific research, Israel and much of the international community remain unconvinced. In 2018, then Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu revealed intelligence claiming Iran was secretly advancing its nuclear weapons capabilities. Since the collapse of the 2015 nuclear deal, Iran has significantly increased its uranium enrichment levels, bringing it dangerously close to weapons-grade material. In recent months, the situation has become more unstable. Israel has intensified its operations in Syria, striking what it alleges are Iranian military installations and arms depots. Iran has responded with strong rhetoric and threats of retaliation, vowing to strike back at the time and place of our choosing. This culminated in an incident just days ago, when Iranian officials claimed that an Israeli airstrike killed several Iranian advisors in Damascus. Tehran's leadership promised a direct and painful response. Now, in a chilling escalation, Iran's Supreme National Security Council has issued a public warning urging Israelis to leave their country. Though not a declaration of war, the message is clear. Iran no longer sees Israel as safe, even for its own civilians. The directive suggests that Tehran is preparing for, or expects, a level of conflict that could make daily life in Israel unsustainable. The question facing the world now is whether this is just psychological warfare, or the opening chapter of something far more dangerous. In a dramatic and highly unusual development, Iranian authorities have issued a public advisory that has sent shockwaves throughout the region. On state-run IRIB television, a broadcast aired in both Farsi and English urged all Israelis and Jewish residents currently within the borders of occupied Palestine to leave the country immediately. The message, which was repeated across multiple government channels and shared widely on affiliated Telegram and X, formerly Twitter accounts, warned that continued presence in Zionist territory will place lives at extreme and irreversible risk. The statement came not from a single spokesperson but appeared to be coordinated at the highest levels of the Iranian regime. Key figures such as the Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, Revolutionary Guard Commander Hossein Salami, and the Foreign Ministry's press secretary all echoed the directive within hours. In one statement, an IRGC broadcast chillingly declared, "The time of warnings is over. The Zionist entity has committed crimes beyond the red line. The resistance front will respond with decisive and continuous operations. Civilians are urged to evacuate to avoid unnecessary harm." Iranian state media also featured pre-recorded video montages showing missile strikes and drone launches, overlaid with threatening messages in Hebrew and Arabic, further escalating the psychological impact of the advisory. One prominent headline read, "Final countdown. Israel must now decide, surrender or suffer." International reactions were swift and polarized. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu convened an emergency security cabinet session just hours after the message aired, calling it a strategic psychological attack designed to sow fear and destabilize the population. In a televised response, he stated, We will not be moved by threats, nor will we allow our enemies to dictate our future. Israel is strong, prepared, and united. The United States condemned Iran's statement as reckless and inflammatory. Secretary of State Antony Blinken emphasized that America stands firmly with Israel and views the statement as a sign of potential escalation. Meanwhile, Russia and China issued more measured responses, calling for restraint but avoiding direct criticism of Iran. European Union leaders, particularly in France and Germany, expressed concern about the humanitarian implications, warning that such rhetoric could lead to uncontrollable escalation and civilian harm. What makes this development especially alarming is its official tone and directness. Unlike past threats couched in vague language or indirect proxies, this message marks a turning point, a clear, open signal from the Iranian state warning of imminent consequences. Whether this is a bluff, a preparation for a military campaign, or a calculated act of psychological warfare remains to be seen. But for many, it's clear, a dangerous new phase has begun. The Iranian order for Israelis to flee their own country has triggered immediate and profound consequences across Israel and the broader Middle East. Though no physical attack accompanied the message, its psychological and geopolitical effects are unmistakable and potentially destabilizing. In Israel, the civilian population is rattled. While residents are no strangers to threats, this directive, delivered through formal Iranian state channels, feels different. It suggests that Tehran believes Israel is about to become a war zone. Within hours of the announcement, social media was flooded with videos of people rushing to supermarkets, filling gas tanks, and revisiting bomb shelter routines. Although the Israeli government has not issued any emergency orders or evacuations, the public mood is tense, anxious, and increasingly on edge. The Israeli Defense Forces, IDF, have moved swiftly into a heightened state of readiness. Military units were seen mobilizing along the northern border near Lebanon and the Golan Heights. Iron Dome batteries have been repositioned to protect major population centers, and reserve units have been quietly called up for preparatory drills. Intelligence coordination with allies, especially the United States and Britain, has intensified. Though no formal war footing has been declared, the Israeli military is clearly bracing for the worst. At the political level, the Israeli government is under pressure both to reassure the public and to respond decisively. Prime Minister Netanyahu and Defense Minister Yoav Gallant have held multiple high-level security consultations. A key challenge now is striking the right balance between deterrence and overreaction. Some hardline members of the Knesset are calling for immediate strikes on Iranian assets, while others urge diplomatic restraint and information warfare. Beyond Israel, neighboring countries are watching with alarm. In Lebanon, Hezbollah has praised Iran's message and declared its readiness to act when the time comes. This has prompted fears that southern Lebanon could once again become a launchpad for attacks on Israel. In Syria, where Iranian militias and Israeli forces have long clashed in the shadows, tensions have surged. The Assad regime has reportedly moved troops away from areas frequently targeted by Israeli strikes, anticipating further escalation. Jordan and Egypt, two countries with peace treaties with Israel, are on high alert. While neither has taken a public stance on Iran's statement, both governments have increased border surveillance and prepared civil defense contingencies. The Gulf states, particularly Saudi Arabia and the UAE, find themselves in a delicate position. Though they quietly align with Israel on countering Iran, they must also manage their own domestic audiences and avoid appearing complicit in Israeli actions. Diplomatic channels are now working overtime. The United Nations has called for an emergency Security Council meeting, while back-channel talks between Washington, Tel Aviv, and Arab capitals seek to prevent any sudden miscalculation from spiraling into open conflict. The regional balance is on a knife's edge. One wrong move could plunge the Middle East into its most dangerous confrontation in decades. While governments trade threats and militaries prepare for conflict, it's the everyday people, families, workers, students, who are now caught in the grip of fear and uncertainty. Across major Israeli cities like Tel Aviv, Haifa, and Jerusalem, a quiet panic has begun to take hold. Though no official evacuation has been ordered, the Iranian directive has had an undeniable psychological impact. Supermarkets report a sharp rise in panic buying, shelves cleared of bottled water, canned goods, and batteries. Pharmacies are overwhelmed, and gas stations are experiencing long lines as residents prepare for the worst. In a crowded bomb shelter in Ashkelon, a mother of 3 told local reporters, "We've lived through missile sirens before, but something feels different this time. I'm keeping my kids home from school. We just don't know what's coming." Hospitals have shifted into emergency preparedness mode, with some non-critical surgeries postponed to free up beds. Schools in areas near the northern and southern borders have implemented remote learning as a precaution. Evacuation drills, routine in Israel, have taken on a new urgency. Footage shared on local news shows citizens running through stairwells during simulated missile strikes. For the elderly and disabled, the strain is growing. NGOs and aid groups are beginning to mobilize, fearing a surge in humanitarian needs if a military confrontation erupts. Meanwhile, some citizens, particularly in border towns, have begun relocating voluntarily to central regions. Hotels in Jerusalem and the Negev have seen a spike in last-minute bookings, reportedly by families trying to distance themselves from likely flashpoints. The emotional toll is palpable. The sound of distant jets overhead, the news cycle filled with apocalyptic headlines, and the memory of past wars all feed a growing sense of dread. Whether or not bombs fall, daily life for ordinary people has already changed. From a military standpoint, Iran's unprecedented call for Israelis to flee is more than rhetorical. It signals a shift toward direct confrontation. Intelligence analysts are now asking, is this the beginning of a larger campaign? If so, what form could it take? For Israel, any direct threat from Iran demands a strong, calculated response. The Israeli Defense Forces, IDF, have placed multiple units on high alert, with troop reinforcements reportedly moving to the Golan Heights and along the Lebanese border. Israel's Advanced Iron Dome, David's Sling, and Arrow missile defense systems have been recalibrated to respond to a potential barrage of rockets, cruise missiles, or even drones. Military analysts suggest Israel could preemptively strike Iranian targets in Syria or Iraq, locations historically used by Iran for storing weapons and coordinating militia activity. The IDF's Air Force, long known for its precision strikes, may also target Iranian command nodes, radar systems, or even nuclear development sites if provoked further. Meanwhile, the United States is watching closely. The Pentagon has reportedly moved naval assets closer to the eastern Mediterranean, including aircraft carriers and missile destroyers. Though U.S. officials have stopped short of confirming direct intervention, they've made clear that any attack on Israel would be met with firm and immediate consequences. Iran, for its part, may not seek an all-out war, but rather a calibrated escalation. Tehran's strategic goal could be to pressure Israel and its allies psychologically, while using proxies to conduct limited operations that stay below the threshold of full-scale war. However, Iran's missile and drone capabilities have improved dramatically in recent years, and its willingness to use them in open warfare, demonstrated in Iraq, Syria, and the Gulf, cannot be dismissed. Another growing concern is cyber warfare. Both Iran and Israel are considered among the most cyber-capable nations in the world. Analysts warn that cyber attacks on infrastructure, power grids, hospitals, banking systems, could be a first step in the next phase of confrontation. Finally, looming in the background is the nuclear question. Iran's uranium enrichment is nearing weapons-grade levels. If Israel believes Tehran is about to cross the red line toward a nuclear bomb, it could consider preemptive strikes similar to its past operations in Iraq, 1981, and Syria, 2007. In short, the military landscape is volatile, and the line between deterrence and escalation is rapidly blurring. The global reaction to Iran's directive has been swift, divided, and deeply reflective of long-standing geopolitical alignments. The United States was the first to issue a formal condemnation. In a White House press briefing, the National Security Council labeled Iran's statement as reckless provocation, warning that any attack on Israeli territory would trigger a coordinated and overwhelming response. President Biden held a call with Prime Minister Netanyahu, reaffirming America's unshakable support for Israel's right to defend itself. The European Union voiced concern over the escalation. Josep Borrell, the EU's foreign affairs chief, called the Iranian message deeply irresponsible and urged both sides to exercise maximum restraint. However, several European capitals, especially Berlin and Paris, have also pushed for emergency diplomatic engagement to de-escalate the crisis. At the United Nations, the Security Council convened a closed-door emergency session. While Western powers condemned Iran's actions, Russia and China took a more neutral stance. Both nations called for calm and dialogue, emphasizing the need to avoid regional destabilization, but neither directly criticized Tehran. Moscow even accused the West of igniting tensions through double standards. In the Arab world, reactions are mixed. Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, though officially silent, are monitoring the situation closely. Behind closed doors, they are reportedly coordinating intelligence with both Israel and the U.S. In contrast, Lebanon's Hezbollah, backed by Iran, publicly welcomed the statement, calling it a necessary warning to an occupier nation. There is now talk of new sanctions targeting Iran's missile program and cyber units, spearheaded by Washington and supported by key EU members. Simultaneously, early discussions are underway among NATO allies and Gulf partners about forming a regional security coalition, primarily for defensive posturing, but the potential for a rapid military alignment remains. In short, the international community is on edge. One misstep could shift the balance from words to war. For some observers, particularly within faith-based communities, the latest escalation between Iran and Israel is seen not only as a geopolitical event, but also through a prophetic lens. In biblical prophecy, references to future conflicts in the Middle East are found in books like Ezekiel 38-39, which speak of a coalition of nations rising against Israel in the last days. Some interpreters associate modern-day Iran with the ancient region of Persia, suggesting that its prominent role in escalating regional tensions could align with such prophetic narratives. On the Islamic side, particularly within Shiite eschatology, there are teachings about a coming savior figure known as the Mahdi, who will emerge during a time of global chaos. Some analysts speculate that elements within Iran's leadership may view regional instability as part of a divine timeline, though this view is debated even within Islamic scholarship. While such interpretations remain speculative and controversial, they reflect how deeply intertwined faith, politics, and identity are in this region, and why every move on this chessboard carries both temporal and spiritual weight. What we're witnessing is not just another cycle of threats and rhetoric. It may be the beginning of a seismic shift in Middle Eastern geopolitics. Iran's direct call for Israelis to flee the country is unprecedented in both tone and intent. While Tehran has long threatened Israel rhetorically, this is the first time it has issued a quasi-official public warning to civilians on such a broad and explicit scale. In the coming weeks, the region will be balancing on a razor's edge. Any miscalculated move, be it a missile launch, a cyber attack, or a covert assassination, could trigger a wider conflict that drags in regional and global powers. Israel's military readiness, combined with Iran's growing regional reach through proxies, means that any escalation could rapidly spiral beyond containment. What makes this moment different is the public nature of the confrontation. This is not covert warfare or back-channel diplomacy. It's an open psychological front. Iran is challenging Israel's national security posture in the public eye and testing its thresholds in full view of the world. That alone changes the game. It forces decision-makers into rapid, high-stakes choices, where domestic opinion and international perception may outweigh strategic caution. The risk of miscalculation is alarmingly high. With Hezbollah in the north, Hamas in the south, and Iranian forces in Syria, Israel faces a multi-front scenario. A retaliatory strike by one side could be interpreted as the opening shot of a broader war, even if it was intended as limited. Similarly, a false alarm or cyber attack could trigger mobilizations and preemptive strikes based on incomplete information. Add to that the fragile global climate, with Ukraine, Taiwan, and a shifting world order, and the stakes multiply. A full-blown Israel-Iran conflict would disrupt oil markets, ignite refugee crises, and polarize alliances across the globe. In short, this isn't just a regional story, it's a global flashpoint. And how leaders respond in the days ahead may determine whether this crisis becomes another tragic chapter in Middle Eastern history or the opening act of something far worse.